The cold night wind swept through Naratar. You'd been on watch here before. You'd never gotten used to the chill. It was a strange place to be. You were an immigrant to these lands, and these folky people were a strange group to you. They were heavily mystic, uh, warlike, brutal, but loyal to a fault in some cases. And they allowed immigrants to come to this town, this new center for all immigrants in the region, where uh, you could interact with Foki and anyone else from around the region. It had its problems. I mean, it was on the border of some forests, but it never really chose any problems. That's why you signed up for the militia. You you swore your Eidvigel, your blood oath, and you swore to defend the village. Something felt off about tonight. Something in the air, the way that all of the Foki were seemed to be preparing for a battle that you had no idea about. You didn't you always were watching, looking. You never saw anything. Yet they rallied themselves. They beat drums, got excited, drank, sharpened their weapons, everything. You you chalked it up to their culture. That was until you started hearing the horns in the woods. At first, you you mistook it for some animal. Then it happened again, only this time closer, a couple minutes later. And it happened again a few minutes later. And you began to realize that that's the battle. Somehow these Foki had known that something was coming. It was only, shortly thereafter that you saw what was blowing these horns. A large war band of orcs had just come out of the woods, tall, ready for battle, faces painted black, wicked weapons in their hands and shields, skulls and bones on their armor, howling at the village as they got themselves pumped and ready to rush the walls and the defenses, rush to kill and die. You shouted for everyone to ready themselves, but your warnings were as if a horn for your own side sounded for the orcs to charge, and they rushed with a speed that you couldn't even comprehend, howling and launched themselves onto the walls. The first few you were able to shoot with your bow before they even got close, but the speed of those orcs was disconcerting, and before you knew it, they were dropping ladders onto the walls and scaling them. A couple of them even threw ropes up and with grappling hooks and began to just climb. You you grabbed your axe and shield and readied with your uh, folky comrades, with your brothers in arms, and prepared to die, prepared to die in battle. And that's when that orc crested over that wall, horns from his helmet just painting this awful image in the shadows of this horned demon. And he raised his axe to you as soon as he crested over and let out a yell. And if that's a story that you're playing with, you might be playing Blood Clans of Jorikk. So, couple months ago, I actually mentioned the impending release of a game called The Blood Clans of Jorikk, and for Hackmaster. And I've been fortunate enough to be given some of those PDFs and to look over and share my thoughts and review. So that's what this is. So A couple of things right off the bat. It's for Hackmaster. Like the books, the setting is for Hackmaster. However, out of the six books that are released so far, I believe only one of them, maybe two of them, had any sort of system in them, and the system was so it was there, but it wasn't like deeply tied into anything that you could easily just rip out the Hackmaster stuff, replace it with whatever you're gonna play, and use all of this material. So out of six PDFs, only like one, maybe two of them have any sort of system in them. So this is not a review of Hackmaster in any way, shape, or form. This is solely about the source material for Blood Clans of Jorikk. And so, right off the get go, it is obviously, as you can imagine, supposed to be a Nordic setting. I mean, all of the imagery, the names, the language, the ideas are all very Nordic. But instead of just going with standard Nordic tropes and, picking up in Scandia or Scandinavia or, whatever, like Yggdrasil, the creator actually decided to make it Nordic, but twist it to make it his own. And I actually really like this because it removes itself entirely from the limitations of playing in an earthbound setting. You no longer have to deal with Earth's maps, geography, topography, culture, settings, things like that. It by what he has done, he's removed all of those elements and allowed you to play in a solely Nordic setting in a expanse of land large enough that you can play a solely Nordic game. Not a game where we interact with other cultures. It's a game where you only interact with other Nordic people, but with a couple of options to play with immigrants from other parts of the Hackmaster setting or in wherever you decide to slap this piece of land. And I actually really enjoyed that just on that principle because I sometimes find that when you're bound to an earthen type setting, you can get jammed up in what you can run more because of trying to capture the elements of a Nordic game of Nordic culture in an earthbound setting requires certain elements, raiding, things like that. If you're because of how the geography of the region where Vikings originated from almost required them to be raiders. So, and that creates a different type of game that you may not be wanting to play. So I really enjoy that as just an aside. I liked how the setting was expansive enough that I could play any story I want. I could play raiders, but I wasn't forced to. There was plenty of land for me to explore, plenty of other enemies for me to fight, and generally there was enough world to interact with while still being Nordic. And so I thought that was great. Um, so there are six books out currently, out of what is supposed to be somewhere around 40. Now, each of these books ranges from, I want to say, 22, 24-ish pages to about 32. So they're all really small packet PDFs that run you anywhere from like $2, I think it's $3 the cheapest, to like 5. And they're all actually really well done if you're going to play in the setting. So I'm just going to, kind of review each one a little bit just to, paint a picture. So the very first one is on lands and wild folk. And this is your introductory book. This begins to paint the picture for the entire region. that this game will take place in, that the blood clans of Jorikk interact with. And it's really well done. This one does not have any sort of system in it. And it details the three dominant cultures: the Toki, the Skarn, and the Targ, I believe. And these are the three folky people. These are the three major distinct cultural distinctions, dialect, things like that. And they all feel realistic. They feel very much like Sweden, Norway, Denmark. They feel close, but different enough to make it feel like it's a different grouping. It doesn't feel artificial. It creates a nice distinction between the three. And I enjoy this because if you watch some of my other reviews, one thing that really bothers me is when the people of a setting don't really feel organic. They feel very much pushed together, and this game made sure that they felt close because they're all the same race, typically, kind of, and they share a language, only with different dialects and variations, but the same core language. And so the cultures feel similar enough to fit in the region, but not so similar that they just kind of blend together always. And that's a really strong element to a game, especially when the like landscape of this game is supposed to be huge. Like it is a giant map in its scale, and all these people are supposed to be around each other, but they're not like pinned up against each other. And moving into that geographical element, this game's geography is actually really cool. The creator left like he defined so pretty much the region has a giant ocean lake in the middle. It's a I mean I say that well, very accurately. It is a huge lake, but it's like landlocked. And so the creator actually defined half of it. So he defined the western and southern shores and all of those cultures. But he pretty much left the northern and eastern shores undefined. They're like things over there. Like there's a mountain range that there's some stories about, and there's supposedly like the end of the world on the other shore. And but he didn't spell out these things, and I really like this because that means that here's half where I can start my campaign. And if I feel like I want to run an adventuring campaign, like in the sense that we go explore and uncover things, I have two other shores that I can do that with, and that really leaves the setting open to being defined as you need it to, as opposed to having to kind of make your story fit within the overall setting. And the second book, actually, Intro to Regions and Weather, actually does this phenomenally as a geographical element. So this one really talks about just the general lay of the land, and as I talked about a moment before, part of the undefined regions. And this book is exactly what you think it's about. It is about regions and weather. This PDF even has a topographical map of the land. And I think this is just so cool because this shows that the creator actually took the time to think about the setting to such a degree that he could create topographical maps, that he could create all these things to make the setting really pop, to really come alive. You don't feel like things are undefined. You don't go, oh, well, what is that? What is this? Why is this there? All of these things. Why are these borders here? It all makes sense because of the geography, the weather patterns, the all of this just to make the world feel real. And this book is actually, I think, one of the first ones that had system, if I recall. But the system is honestly like a weather chart. Like you roll on it for weather effects. I think this is the one that has that. And it is actually, if you're not running in the setting, it's not going to be super important. But I think the PDF is $2 or $3 for the intro to regions and weather, and actually adds so much in the sense of I'm learning about this setting through this geographical features, through the weather, and really adds a lot to the setting. And the third book is actually a specific regional source book for the Middle Plains of Drokar. And these people are, plains like people. I get the impression that they're, horsemen more than the others, because they actually have a very large expanse of land that doesn't have very many forests. It borders some forests, and it's on the southern shore. And this book actually goes into a lot of detail for the culture, for their history, how they interact with others, the other groups, what their kind of dialect is, and really it's just helpful because it takes the best parts of source book like ideas and compacts them by removing the burden of setting system, and really focusing on that setting to make you feel like these people are actually there. This one details a very large expanse of a kingdom. It's one of the three major clusters of kingdom, if I recall, and it does a really good job of making you understand this culture in this region. And so even if you're not playing in the region, it's helpful to have it so that you can understand it when you have NPCs from that region. And the fourth book is actually a city book, for lack of a better term. It details a small settlement. Well, not small, but a settlement. And it follows much of the same pattern as the Middle Plains of Drokar, in that it focuses more on getting you to understand how these settlements work, but also if you're going to design a settlement, you have an idea, a framework to work in to help spark your own creativity, and spur you forward. Um, then there's the saga of Vigard Dunjork, and this is a book about a great hero, essentially. And this one's really cool, mainly because I really like how the creator took the time to create a saga for bardic characters to tell in his world. Now, that's not its sole purpose. It's a dual purpose thing. One, it does that. It creates stories and legends and myths for bardic characters to tell, and for characters in taverns to hear, or meat halls. And I think that's really great because that's something I feel is missing from a lot of games and a lot of settings is songs. These are all fantasy games and what have you, and yet something very critical seems to always be missing, and that is songs. Those are legends, myths, folk tales, things that are unconfirmed but everyone just believes. And I really like how this this adds that into the setting by by default. It's being created, it's being developed, and I really like that. But it also tells the tale of a pivotal figure in the world. So you can actually learn about world events through reading about this character's escapades. And I think it's a really helpful way to grab a reader and a player and a GM and kind of pull them in to your setting by telling them a story that tells the world events as opposed to a table with just events and years, which it actually does have in it for those who prefer that. But it allows you to read about the events and really become immersed and feel them and get a good idea of how this setting is. And it's like a short novel. I really like that because I feel that novels can explain more for a feeling and mood and atmosphere of a setting better than a like just this is what it is because the story relates more to what you're going to do. You're going to tell a story here. It helps to see someone else's story so that you kind of get an idea of how it's done, how it's supposed to feel and look. And the sixth source book that's out so far is probably my favorite because it is a book of vocabulary. And I think that is awesome. Just no bones about it. I think that is the coolest thing is that the creator took the time to develop 20 some odd pages of words for this setting so that you can drop them into your character, your NPCs dialogue, to your rituals, to your players, everything. You can slowly begin to transition out of using only English into using this Skarnic language and actually, become more immersed in the setting through it. And I really like that because, some games will have like a writing system that's, very just English characters just redone. And, I like that because it's simple and it really helps you kind of get into it. And then if you learn it, you can actually kind of like write things for your character in it. And I think that's really cool. But the fact that the creator went so far as to develop not a language per se, there's no grammar structure really, and but to develop a vocabulary that you can use for common phrases, words, things like Eidvigo, I'm probably butchering that, is blood oath, and in a Nordic culture, blood oaths are a big deal, so to be able to like have a word for that other than blood oath, I think is actually really cool. So, you know, out of the with only the six books that are out, PDFs that are out so far for this game, I think if you're gonna run a Nordic game and you want to give something a try that's different enough that it can breathe new life into your Nordic ideas, but not so different that you really lose the elements of Nordic culture and what being a Viking really was. I strongly encourage you to check this out. Even if you only pick up a handful of these, like, most people don't really need, the Skarn tongue of the North. Some might not even want the Saga of Vigard Dunjork. But just picking up a couple of these and reading through it, you'll want to play in it. You'll want to run it. I mean, you may not want to use Hackmaster. I'm not a huge fan of it, but there's only so much system in these books, and I strongly encourage you to check it out and play it with whatever system you want to play it with, because converting what little system there is in these books would take you all of like 5 minutes. So, strongly encourage you to check it out, and until next time.